Oh, welcome back. Nice to see you guys. This week we're going down, all the way down. I'm talking Florida. Tom Brady, the Seminoles, aka the only Native American team that hasn't had to change their name, and the man, the myth, the legend, Florida Man. Read the news, you'll find out. Also, the Cubano, iconic sandwich brought to the Tampa Bay area somewhere between 1860 and 1900. It is said to have been brought by workers in cigar factories in Cuba, and because they just came over all willy-nilly between the islands and the Keys, that sandwich landed home. Another thing that landed home, Oba Chandler. This man is one of the worst humans to ever grace the Tampa Bay area. Elusive, coercive, and disgusting. The acts that he committed in order to place him in jail are just utter terror and horror. This is Crime and Dine, and this is the case of Oba Chandler. So we're going to just start this off, and we're going to walk into his early life. He was born in 1946 in Cincinnati. Not much is really said about what happened in his early life, leading up to like the traumatic point where he was 10 years old. Now, when he was 10 years old, his father, this would be 1957, his father decided that he had his mental health issues or whatever have you, but he was going to take his own life. And I'm assuming that Oba Chandler, Jr. technically, was really close with his dad. And it was super traumatic to the point where he had actually allegedly, this is not confirmed, nor is it denied, jumped into the casket as they were lowering it into the ground. You know, the gravekeepers were sitting there, they were trying to get their shit done because, I mean, it's a dead guy and he needs to be, you know, well taken care of and get the proper burial that his family believes he deserves. And Oba's just not having it. It's a very difficult thing for him to go through. And with this traumatic experience that he had of losing his father, I mean, we can only imagine what happens considering I'm talking about him here on the show. Life didn't go too well during his juvenile years. I mean, the guy was arrested 20 plus times as a juvenile. From things as simple as just like basically, robbery, burglary, and just general mania, just kind of being a stupid little kid in ways, like nothing too terrible in my opinion. I mean, those are not fucking cool, but at the same time, I mean, it's not the worst. I'm not going to condemn you forever. And then we kind of go a little further. Someone's got to push the envelope, and now he's touching people. And I mean, in all the ways you can touch somebody, as far as assaulting them physically, accosting them, even exposing himself at one point, and then trying to sexually assault women along the way. I mean, this kid, we're maybe 12 years old, up to the fact that he was like 15, 16 years old, just kept going his own way. No Fleetwood Mac, but like, I'm just saying. And with that, like, he had to come into his own, and he was just in so much trouble. He's constant contact with the police, and that would actually later on come to benefit him in an odd way during the investigation, where the FBI were like, what's up with this guy? And he's like, I have some things to tell you. And as he keeps going, you're going to come to find that with all the things that he's done, it is only a clear point of escalation. Like, there's no going back from that. As we know from all the other people we've spoken about, as it just ramps up from robbery to assault to hurting people, and especially at a young age, there's only one way this goes. There's only one way this ends up. And I can assure you it's not good. Okay, so this takes us to him moving down to Florida. Obviously having his career as a juvenile criminal and stuff like that, he has to go find a job where he's not being noticed per se, and he just can avoid his past. So he goes down there and he first starts off as like this aluminum siding guy, but like didn't have the qualifications for it. So the next thing you know, like he's buying a boat. It's fucking Florida. That's what they do, okay? And he's just living his life down in Tampa. And some other people were trying to live their life. A mother and two of her children. This is in May of 1989. They haven't gone on vacation. They're really locked up, and they're also from Ohio, mind you. So they decided they were going to drive all the way down to, Orlando, and they were going to have their first full-on family vacation. They haven't done it in forever. They're stressed out. They're just trying to really unwind, and this is the best way. Girls' Day, you know what I mean? Just hanging out with the ladies. And they drove down there. On the way back, got a little lost. There's no, Google Maps. There's no Waze or anything like that. It's fucking Christopher Columbus style. You just kind of go through and do it and hope to God you get to your destination. In doing so, they kind of get sidetracked in Tampa, decide it's too late to like just figure out where we're going to go. We're not going to drive through the night. We're just going to take an extra vacation day here. And first thing we have to do though is we have to find a hotel. So they end up in a marina. And in this marina, they see a gentleman by the boat. And knowing that Oba is from Ohio himself, he approaches them as a friendly guy, you know, like, oh, I see you're from Ohio. It looks like you've lost your way. Let me be of assistance. You know, I'm going to be a really good guy. So he ends up taking and writing down directions on a piece of paper to direct these three, you know, wonderful ladies to a place to stay for the evening. And then upon them leaving, he goes, hey, if you're still here in the morning, I have a great boat. We're at the marina. I would be more than happy to, you know, boost your vacation, give you an experience, and take you out on the water. Free of charge, no big deal. Come here around between 9 and 10 a.m. It would be great. So they consider it, but they really want to get to their destination. And the destination is the hotel. They're tired. They've been driving. They're lost. They're in a very large area they're unaware of. I mean, Tampa's pretty freaking big. And so they get to their hotel. They're all getting comfortable. They're taking little photos, trying to really commemorate the trip. This is the first trip they've had in such a long time as a family, or at least, you know, as the girls all together. And they are just having a good old time. Decided by the end of the night that they were going to go ahead and take Oba up on his offer. He seemed well enough like a nice gentleman. I mean, he had a boat. He was helpful. They're both from Ohio. You know, kindred folks come together and they figure it out. And possibly this could be a great experience for them. Seeing as, you know, it's a mother with two daughters who've never done anything pretty out of the ordinary when it comes to vacation or going around. So they end up going to, you know, the marina to meet with Oba. And they do. They meet with Oba. They get on the boat. They go out. They're doing their thing. And I'd like to say, you know, they had a great time. It was amazing. They experienced something with this really nice gentleman who was just trying to help some wayward travelers find their way and enjoy the last leg of their vacation. However, that is not the case. As time rolls by, I mean, they're down there. They have a dad, the husband, and he becomes concerned. He's not hearing anything. And it's also, they were on their way home when they had encountered Oba. And with that, they should be here by now. It's been a couple of days, it's a little too long. He's trying to call the hotel. He's trying to shop around, figure out where in Florida they are. And he just can't find anything. There's no doing in any of it. And as the days go by, I mean, it's concerning. He calls the police officers. He really tries to get a handle on exactly what's going on with his daughters and, you know, his wife, because they're missing. And it's been so long. There's no internet. There's no MySpace, no Facebook. There's no freaking way that they could ever really make any communication with their dad or her husband, you know, being 1989. Going forward, a couple of days turn into a couple of weeks, 3 weeks to be exact. And in 3 weeks' time, they find 3 female bodies in a river. And in this river, they discover that the female bodies, they're bloated, so they float to the surface, but they are tied up, bound, half-dressed, and actually weighed down with cinder blocks. Just due to the bloating, they floated to the surface. Without being able to positively ID them right away due to decomposition, there were no leads for a couple of days, couple of weeks, and then because the dad is just so frantic to find his family, figure out where they are, like, what the hell is going on, they kind of put 2 and 2 together. They find her vehicle at the marina. They see that. They see the note with the directions on it, but there's no name on it. It's not like they're going to know who wrote that note. And from there, I mean, there's an investigation, but no pun intended. I mean, they're dead in the water at this point. They have nowhere to go, no leads, no cameras, no internet tracking, no credit card tracking, none of that. And with that, the case is going to be pretty tricky to get figured out, find who exactly would have the motive, why they would do this to this lovely family, and the case goes cold. And as the case goes cold, investigators are doing their very best to figure out exactly what they can grab and what they can use to help find whoever hurt this family. And the worst part about it all is after, like, through their bloating, it's hard to read, but they get their fingerprints. They start figuring things out, and they do an autopsy. And in the autopsy, the coroner discovers the fact that more than likely, due to the water in the lungs of these women, they were actually alive when they were roped up, concreted and thrown into the water. One of the most horrific ways to die, knowing that there was nothing you can do. I can only imagine the sick pleasure this little fucker got out of it. But with the case being cold, and they have, again, very little leads to go on. They have the car, they have the hotel room, and they find the fingerprints verifying the fact that, like, you know, these bodies were in that hotel room. They can confirm that it is the woman and her family from Ohio. And then after 3 years, they have nothing to go on. They're doing their best. They're doing their damnedest to figure out exactly what they can do. And the only thing they can do is think that little note that we had talked about earlier that he had written to direct them to the hotel because they were lost is plastered on a billboard. Like, do you recognize this handwriting? Have you seen this before? And a couple days go by and nothing really bites. But then Oba's neighbor recognizes that handwriting, sees that looks very familiar. Maybe we should look into this guy, Oba. He's my neighbor. I've seen him do this before as far as like writing and everything like that. It looks very similar to his handwriting. And it is the first time in the history of the United States that a billboard with handwriting on it was used to persevere and get and pursue the very top suspect. Because as soon as they started looking at what Oba was doing and do his stuff, they found that the handwriting was very similar. And then they go back into his background and they realize that, like, he had assaulted people. He was someone who had a troubled juvenile past. And they start putting two and two together, and they zero in on Oba. And later on, bring him in for interrogation in order to figure out exactly what happened. And let's just say this guy is not really strong, mentally at least, because he's about to break. After dialing it in and finding him as a suspect through the handwriting and the witness testimony, it was time to go to court. Now in court, there was a hypothesis of there possibly being, a second accomplice, or like he wasn't the guy, they didn't think everything tied, even though it did. There were witnesses that came forward, said that his behavior was lewd and lascivious, and like he was just that kind of guy. He was a dangerous person. I mean, even his wife attested to the fact that there had been violence in the household, that he was somebody who was quick to anger, and he seemed fully capable of this. As they're proceeding with the trial, the real nail in the coffin for this guy in order to get the sentence that he's going to end up with was the fact that after the coroner went through and did the autopsy, seeing like there was obvious signs of sexual assault, that there were things in which like they were slightly tortured, he also discovered there's a good chance that when all three of these wonderful women were thrown off of the boat after they were tied up, that they were alive. And to that, the judges thought was incredibly heinous. And being at the state of Florida, I mean, these are 3 capital murders immediately. Shows intent, shows everything you're supposed to show. And they go through the trial. Again, not me, you got the wrong guy. And the judge, the prosecutor, like, no, we caught you. You're a fucking monster. This is definitely, exactly where we're supposed to be. And even though it took us a couple years to get through it, and the analysis is basically that of like, we have a handwriting sample. We also have DNA. We also have firsthand accounts of the fact that you would have ran into these women. And we also, again, have the handwriting and all these eyewitness testimonials and the way in which they died and exactly the location in which their bodies were found, because he concreted them so it kind of anchored them close to where his boat would be able to travel to. And with that, that's great. With that, they convict him of 3 counts of capital murder, and he has to await his sentencing. Now, traditionally, you would have a plancha or something like that, and you'd be able to like pull it down and get like the right grill marks, and you'd butter up the top or whatever, and you'd probably use different bread, but this is the bread I had to work with. This is where we're gonna go. It's a little bit of an innovation to the Cubano. If you're up north, this is the best I have to work with. So instead of having a plancha, I'm just gonna weigh it down with this Dutch oven. It's mad heavy. It'll definitely get the job done. Just kind of square her up. Give her a go. we come to a close. Found guilty, 3 counts capital murder in the state of Florida, which is a death penalty state. Oba has to exhaust all of his appeals. He does so. And then, to finish it off, November 2011, which is the most recent execution that I can think of, this monster, this callous individual, this person who decided to commit familicide without it even being his family, decimating and tearing the lives apart of so many people, callously letting them know that they were going to die. He's put to death. And I think justice is served. As is a Cubano. We're looking at this, we got a little bit of crustification here, right? Be a little better if you had like a George Foreman or a panini press or even a plancha. Like if you could get your hands on one of those, I'd highly recommend it. But I mean, just looking at this is gonna be incredible. The cheese looks melty, the ham's coming out, you got a little crispiness on the edges of it. A little bit of the mustard came out, but you know, that's all the fun. So we're gonna go ahead and cut into this bad boy. And give it a whirl. Look at that. We have all the flavors there. I mean, we got the pork that's melted in there, melded in there. We got the ham, we got the pickle, crispiness on the side. The Swiss is just completely good to go. I mean, I'm gonna try not to burn my whole face off because that's a real thing. Okay. I mean, it's fantastic. Just getting the dill pickle in there and having that like vinegariness to it and that acidity, along with the mustard, and you pour in like this salty sweetness that comes from the Swiss, as well as like having 2 different styles of pork. I mean, ham itself, it contains a lot of salt, like hence why I didn't salt the brine. I know you guys recognize that. And then having the pork, you know, the roast pork, which we kind of, you know, we fast tracked and we hit it on the grill, then we put it in the oven. But all in all, tender sandwich, very flavorful, crispy outside. You can't miss. You got it all. Diversity of flavors, and it just feels like American grilled cheesy. I mean, just this influence of cumin and like with the seasonings, I just can't describe it. You have to make this for yourself. You definitely should do yourself a service and get this in your mouth. It's a very simple dish. Honestly, the video is long just because we're talking about a crime. This is easy as hell to make. And with that, you know, like hit the notification bell, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about us, and we're happy to stop by. It's great to see you guys. This has been Crying and Dying. Stay safe out there.